The sun and the earth alone had existence. The sun sought a wife and found none but the earth. She gave birth to twins. One of these became the solid ground upon which we live, and the other became our divinity. After living in this world for some time, he saw the mist and knew that the people would soon come into being. Then he went away to the north. As the legends say, the Hoopa Indians of Northern California have lived in this lush valley for hundreds of generations. There are no legends telling of them migrating here, only the one about their creation here in the valley. The ancient legends also tell of a time when the river headed west as it left the valley, instead of the easterly direction it takes today. Geologists say the river changed its course over 50,000 years ago. Although carbon dating studies indicate a continuous use of over 5,000 years, no one really knows just how long the Hoopas have lived in this valley. The ancient name for the Hoopas was Natinue, and the valley was called Natinuk, which means where the trails return. When the first whites came into this area, they learned about our people from the neighboring Yurok Indians, who called us Hoopa, and that is the name we are known by today. Hi, I'm Byron Nelson, and I'm a member of the Hoopa Tribal Council. Along with other tribal members, we'll tell you about the history of this valley, what it means to us, and what the future holds for our tribe. Over the ages, the Hoopa tribe maintained a population of about 1,000 persons within this 7-mile-long valley. The valley itself was the heart of Hoopa territory, but the tribe controlled a much larger area. Most of the Hoopa lived in a series of 13 villages along the river. The villages were usually built on the east side of the river so that they could be warmed by the afternoon sun. Their homes were made of cedar planks, and notches were dug out in the large timbers to keep the structures together. They were built partially underground and provided great comfort in both the winter and summer months. The Hoopa were not a warlike people, so their homes were built for comfort, not defense. Takamilding was and is the spiritual center for the tribe. Only the descendants of this village can be chosen as the spiritual leaders of the Hoopa. Some of the other villages along the river were Tishtang, Matilding, and Sewinalden. Daily life was very similar in all the villages throughout the valley. Well, this is the main family house. This is the junta. This is where the women slept, and this is where most of the family activity went on. The men slept in the sweat house over here, and the Hoopas were early risers, so the women would be the first ones to get up and go to the river and bathe and come back and build the fires and start the morning meal. The men would get up soon after and go down and bathe in the river and come back and join in the morning meal. After the morning meal was over, they would clean the utensils and put them away, and then they would begin their daily activities. The men would, along with boys 10 and older, would go out and hunt and fish mainly, and the women would do basketry and possibly go out and gather berries and roots and plants. The young children would remain here with the older people who stayed at the village. At the end of the day, they would meet back here and join in the evening meal, and then after that they would retire. Hoopa was blessed to have abundant resources. The river was filled with trout, steelhead, sturgeon, and eels, and provided 3 runs of salmon every year. The valley and surrounding mountains were loaded with wildlife such as deer and elk. Because of this abundance, the tribe developed a highly sophisticated society based on spiritual beliefs. There were special dances and ceremonies that offered prayers for continued peace and prosperity. The ancient legends not only served as a link to the past, but guided them in their daily conduct, which provided a life of harmony and unity for the people of the Hoopa Valley. Now to learn more about early Hoopa life, let's visit the Hoopa Tribal Museum and talk with curator Ralph Magulina.
This is a Indian dress what they use or wear during the brush dance or maybe during the jump dance. It's made out of deer hide, tanned with the deer brain, It makes it real soft. And there's two parts. There's an apron and a skirt. And it has abalone on it and trade beads. And the white clamshells you see there used to come from Humboldt Bay. What we're looking at now is women's caps, what they would wear during the ceremonial times, dances. And the one with the 5 woodpecker scalps are from a pileated woodpecker scalp, and that's a sign of wealth. And the design in the basket is Mikiot Melat, which means grizzly bear's hand. And this is another cap, which is made of alder bark dye, which is the red in the basket. And the design in there is called a wax pou, which is the friendship design. This here is the Alcorn Purse, which was used to keep dentalium, which is coming out here. Dentalium shells was a form of money by the Hoopa people and the neighboring tribes. The purses was used by the men only. Now these are arrowheads, and the black with the red is made out of obsidian. These are spearheads. They're used for put on short stabbing spears, and they're made for war. And now, since we have no more war dance, they use them in the brush dance, which when they jump in the middle imitating the coyote. This basket is an acorn cooking basket. It is made entirely of spruce root, and with the bear grass as the design. It's a gichlachan design, which is the deer's eye. It's made of spruce root, which when water hits it, it swells. These baskets are watertight.
Baskets were an integral part of early Hoopa life. Today, Marilyn Hauser is keeping that historic tradition alive. She teaches a basket-making class to young people and other interested people of the valley.
Well, the process of making a basket is getting your material first. And it's a year-round process. You have to, in the springtime, get your sticks, your willow sticks, your hazel sticks. And in the summertime, you get your grass, your bear grass. In the fall, you get your ferns. And in the wintertime, you get your willow roots. Once you learn how to do that, you have to dry your material, you have to dye it. With your spruce roots, now you have to cook it. In order to keep it white, you cook it outside, and then you can split it any size you want. A long time ago, they had to keep making them for their cooking, they ate out of them, they cooked out of them, they gathered the berries with them and cleaned the berries, so they had to make them, and they don't last forever, so you just keep making them. I think it was really time-consuming because some of the bigger baskets, you only maybe do three rows a day, and it'll take you all day. And some of the ones my mom used to make. But now we usually make small stuff. Maybe can finish a basket in 2 days, a smaller basket. I believe it's very important. It gives the children a sense of worth that they can do it, you know. And we've always had our religion to come back to and our tradition. So, and basket making is just part of it.
Another lady who's carrying out an old tradition is Mildred Nixon. She is one of several people in the valley who still make one of the old Hoopa staples, acorn soup.
Well, we usually gather the acorns in the fall and then bring them home and dry them on a flat floor or around the stove, and then we, after they're dry, we grind them. With your grinding, 100 years ago, they used rocks and you pounded your acorns. After we grind it to so it would be fine, we'd soak it and have to pour water through it several times, about 3-4 hours before it turns sweet. Then you take your acorns and you take it and put it in the basket, and then you add some water and stir it, and then add your hot rocks. You have certain kind of rocks that you use, and you don't find it just any place. You have to look for it, and you have to know what kind of rock to use, otherwise don't heat up. And so we stir it. We have to keep moving the rock because otherwise it'd burn the basket. And so you let it boil until it turns thick, and then you pour some water in it and let it boil some more, and then you taste it, and you can taste whether it's cooked or not. I pray every time I make acorn soup. When I soak it, when it's through soaking, I pray. My aunt taught me, we call it medicine, and she taught me how to do that. And no matter how bitter your acorns are, everybody will think it's just sweet as candy. And so that's why I'll say my medicine is good. That's why the acorns are sweet.
Making acorn soup, weaving baskets, hunting and fishing, and our ceremonial dances were all part of basic Hoopa life for hundreds of years. It was a perfectly balanced society that took care of everyone's needs. Then in the 1800s, changes began taking place in Northern California, and soon white man came to the valley. Eventually, this would force our tribe to alter its lifestyle to ensure our people's survival. About 30 miles west of the Hoopa Valley lies Trinidad Bay. In 1579, Sir Francis Drake was the first to anchor here, and in the following years, many other ships also stopped in this beautiful bay. But the Hoopa people would not meet their first white man until 1828, when Jedediah Smith and 19 men drove 300 horses and mules through the valley. During the next 20 years, other fur trapping expeditions following Smith passed through the valley, though it was not until the gold rush of 1849 that a more dangerous white man came to the area. These men did not respect or recognize any of the Indian laws which had kept peace here for hundreds of years. At first, the Hoopas were not subject to their violent lifestyle because the mining camps were further up the Trinity and Klamath rivers. But outside Hoopa territory, the strangers had begun to build towns and homes. When California became a state, the white residents wanted the Indians removed, as Indians east of California had been. But there was no place to relocate the tribes, so officials proposed a new solution. They would set aside islands of land in this new state for the native people. In 1851, Reddick McKee, a commissioner for the U.S. government, met with the leaders of the Karuk, Yurok, and Hoopa tribes and negotiated a treaty. And although it gave them a reservation and promised government protection, it was one of the 18 treaties made that year not ratified by Congress. Before long, the Hoopa people in our valley were threatened. One evening during 1858, the Yurok agent from the Yurok reservation just happened to be in a saloon in Blue Lake, California, which is about 40 miles west of Hoopa. He overheard in that saloon that a large body of well-armed men were proceeding down the Trinity River from Weaverville, California, with the intention of wiping out the Hoopa tribe. He reportedly stole a horse and was able to catch the men before they arrived in the valley and turn them back. Knowing that this would probably happen again, the agent recommended to the U.S. government that a fort be established in the Hoopa Valley. After this incident, the Hoopa began gathering weapons. Some white settlers who had begun farming in the valley didn't want to get caught in the middle of a war, so they too petitioned for a fort and also took Hoopa leader Captain John to San Francisco. So when Captain John returned from San Francisco, he met with the Hoopa on the sandbar. And to demonstrate what he saw in San Francisco, he reached down and picked up a handful of sand. And he told them not to fight the whites because they were as numerous as the sand on the beach. Soon after this trip, the government decided something had to be done, so Fort Gaston was established in the Hoopa Valley. When the U.S. troops first arrived here in Hoopa, their first assignment was to build a command post. So they built this building here made from adobe bricks in 1858, and it was the first building of Fort Gaston. The fort and the troops kept peace in the valley for a while, but after 5 years, some whites began questioning the neutrality of the Hoopas in the conflicts which seemed to surround the area. So in August 1863, troops of Fort Gaston decided to take direct action against the Hoopa tribe. What you see here is the site of the old village of Matilding, which means place of boats. With over 200 residents and over 30 houses, it was the largest Hoopa village. It was from this spot here that on September 4th, 1863, that Major Taylor had set up his howitzers and totally surrounded the village. So on that September morning of 1863, when the people of Matilding awoke, they found themselves totally surrounded by hundreds of troops from Fort Gaston. The people had no choice but to give themselves up. Had they resisted, they would have been totally annihilated. They were taken from here down to Fort Gaston, which is about a mile down the road here, and they remained there as prisoners until about a year later when the treaty was signed. After this uncalled for action, the rest of the Hoopas decided it was time to fight. The tribe waged a guerrilla war against the government troops. When the military realized they couldn't beat the Hoopas, the government finally negotiated a treaty of peace and friendship on August 12, 1864. The treaty contained all the things the Hoopas were fighting for. The whole valley, including the surrounding mountains, was set aside as a reservation, and amnesty was granted for all who fought in the war. The clash between the two cultures had brought more changes to the Hoopa Valley than the previous 1,000 years, and with the Treaty of 1864, there was an even more deliberate attempt to change the Hoopas' lives. The government called their policy assimilation, and it was an attempt to turn the nation's Indians into farmers and Christians. But the Hoopas learned farming willingly, realizing it could replace their depleted natural resources. Then in 1871, the reservation programs were taken over by civilian agents, and the farms began to decline. In 1876, after many agents had come and gone, an attempt was made to sell the valley and move the Hoopas to Round Valley. Realizing this would cause a war, the plan was abandoned, and the military again was given control. The Hoopas had saved their homeland again, this time without firing a single shot. Over the next decade, farming continued, but the Hoopa refused to give up most of their old lifestyles. Then in 1882, a huge landslide blocked the Trinity River, and when the water finally broke through, most of the traditional Hoopa homes were destroyed. This catastrophe basically broke up the village system, and the Hoopa rebuilt away from the river with frame homes. Meanwhile, outside pressure was being placed on the government to remove troops from the valley. This was due mainly to allegations that the troops were corrupting the Hoopa people. But by 1890, the fort still had not been abandoned, largely because soldiers were needed to control trespassers on the neighboring Yurok reservation. In an attempt to protect Yurok land and allow the troops to leave the valley, President Harrison, on October 16, 1891, issued an executive order to join the Hoopa and Yurok reservations. That placed the Yurok reservation and the land between the two reservations under the supervision of the Hoopa agent. With this accomplished, the troops were soon gone and the buildings converted to a boarding school.
We used to go to school about half a day and work half a day. Monday through Friday. Friday we get to go home. And a lot of the kids come from outside, even from Covelo. The kids up here, and they used to stay there Sundays and all. They didn't get to go home. But us Hoopa guys, we used to go home on Friday night.
The boarding school was just one of the many changes in the valley, but the Hoopa survived the 19th century with much of their homeland and culture intact. The next great threat to the tribe would not occur for another 80 years. With emphasis on farming and ranching to support its economy, the Hoopas moved through the first part of the 20th century.
We had a farm. I mean, I used to go up on the north end here, and you could look down and this beautiful fields of different colors, you know, farming. Just beautiful.
In 1911, the Hoopa elected their first tribal council to deal with government-sponsored projects in the valley. In 1918, the Hoopa received their long-awaited allotments of individual lands, provided for under the Dawes Act. In 1932, the boarding school was converted to a regular day school. And in 1933, the Hoopa elected its first tribal council, formally recognized by the U.S. government, and established its constitution and bylaws. Following World War II, the Hoopa tribe began to log the timber in the mountains of the reservation. In 1950, after a vote of the people, the Hoopa established their enrollment standards and began to distribute timber revenues to its membership. Because of the logging activity on the reservation, the 1950s became the most prosperous time in Hoopa history. The timber harvest in 1951 and 52 alone equaled the amount cut in the previous 2 decades. At one time during the 50s, 7 sawmills operated in the valley, and each Hoopa received per capita payments from its revenues. Meanwhile, a group of Yuroks began to raise questions to the government about the 1891 executive order that combined the Hoopa and Yurok reservations. On March 27, 1963, 16 Yurok plaintiffs filed a lawsuit that became known as the Jesse Short case. In 1972, the Court of Claims upheld the Yurok appeal to share in the per capita payments of the income from Hoopa reservation timber. The Supreme Court upheld that decision the following year. Then in June of 1974, because the Yuroks numbered over 3,800 plaintiffs and the Hoopas only 1,500, the Bureau of Indian Affairs Area Director proclaimed that 70% of the Hoopa's timber revenue would be held until the outcome of the Short case. Despite this loss of income, the Hoopa Tribal Council continued to develop various programs in the valley. Then after already spending huge amounts of money fighting off the Short case and other cases that had stemmed from it, the Hoopas were faced with the Puz case. The Puz case was meant to strip the Hoopa Tribal Council of all authority on the reservation. With our tribal government threatened, other solutions to the ongoing controversy were explored. Time had come, it was decided, to introduce a bill in Congress to protect our rights and our homeland, the Hoopa Valley. A true tribal effort was put forth. Our people worked hard, and after meetings and rallies around Northern California, in Washington, D.C., and on the steps of the state capitol in Sacramento, Bill 4469 was signed into law by President Reagan on October 31, 1988. Congressman Doug Bosco was one of the sponsors of the bill.
Well, it means that for the first time, the United States government recognizes the Hoopa Valley Reservation as a sovereign territory owned by the tribe, and they can now chart their own course and fulfill their own destiny without BIA agents or members of Congress or anyone else telling them what to do. This is a beginning for these people, but it's a good beginning, and they brought it about themselves.
In addition to recognizing Hoopa sovereignty, the new law also divided the combined reservation into one for each tribe.
Well, this felt necessary because this conflict between the Yuroks and the Hoopas have been going on now for over 100 years. And it's been the cause of harsh words and anger and nothing happening, so we decided to take this stand.
A few months after the bill passed, the tribe had a big celebration. This first annual event, appropriately called Sovereign Day, was held on April 28, 1989, at the tribal office grounds. There was a great turnout of Hoopa leaders, other tribal members, and representatives of the U.S. government, such as Congressman Bosco and Senator Daniel Inouye.
California has one of the saddest chapters in our relationship with Indians. Here they try to remove the Indians, they try to exterminate the Indians, and in the early days when the Spaniards came in, it was a period of slavery. And so, notwithstanding that, they have survived. If they take advantage of the possibility of joining hands and working together, then they'll not only survive but flourish. So this may be the beginning of the period of flourishing.
All that you've achieved you've achieved yourselves. And may I wish you the very best now, that this land, now yours by law, will fulfill your hearts, your hopes, and your destinies. Thank you.
And that seemed to be the mood of this day, a celebration of what was now possible. Among the many speakers for the day was Hoopa medicine woman Winnie George, who led the crowd in a native Hoopa prayer.
May the Hoopas enjoy and experience peace and prosperity for 10,000 years. Thank you very much.
Following the speakers was a traditional feast featuring what else but smoked salmon. There were also demonstrations of the brush dance and of a Hoopa sport called the stick game. Elder Herman Sherman remembers when he used to play this physically demanding game.
Yeah, I played. Well, you just play for that ball, I guess we call it. That's the one they toss back and forth. If you can get away and toss her that, about 100 yards, if they don't catch you, you toss her out and you win. And they'll hold you, you know. That was a rough game. They throw you down, rub you in the dirt. The clowns used to come up play Hoopa. Sometimes they win, sometimes Hoopa will win.
So while honoring the past, the Hoopa people celebrated what now appears to be a much brighter future. Because of the Settlement Act, our people feel even more secure in their future. And that's one of the reasons we have several new programs that concentrate on long-term goals. And directing those goals is the Hoopa Tribal Council, the central body of the tribe's government. The council resembles ancient Hoopa government with representatives from areas of the traditional villages.
Okay, the first place, the government structure here has 7 districts here. And we have a representative from each district, and I happen to be from the Ball Hill district, and then we have a chairman, which makes eight people in as the administrators or the governing body of the tribe, similar to your county supervisors. That's so. What we do, we're elected at large. I mean, all the people vote for. Me, if I ran from the Ball Hill district, all the membership would vote. We also meet twice a month, first Thursday and the third Thursday of each month. And of course, if we need to meet more often, we do.
On Indian reservation is a real sensitive item right now.
We have an education director, we have the planning director, and they run that through. And under that, those people, they're under a board. We also have a housing authority here, and this housing authority is it's a HUD program. But all of these departments have been created by the council.
One department of the council, the Development Corporation, is pursuing a program to generate more jobs and income for the tribe, a logging company. While logging does have a long history in the valley, much of the logging in the past was done by outside companies who reaped most of the profits. The Development Corporation is now in charge of a Hoopa logging company, using tribal members to do most of the work. But the Hoopa are also conscious of their precious environment. No logging is allowed in areas which can be seen from the heart of the valley, and there is now a large forest regeneration facility.
The tribe, they wanted to manage their own reservation, and this was one of the ways of managing the reservation was growing their own trees. They go out and they log the forest, and then they come back and reforest it. So they built this greenhouse here. This greenhouse is a Dutch building, and as you can see, has venting systems and has a shade system. And we don't have our big fans like other nurseries do. This greenhouse is controlled by a computer system, and that's what controls the vents and the shade system. When we start with our seeding equipment, we are in that production line over there. We come in and we fill these trays up with seedlings. Well, we put a seed in each tray, and then after it germinates, we roll it into the greenhouse. Then after it germinates, we grow this tree for about 6 months, and then after that, when the tree gets ready, then we'll take it and we'll bring a crew on, and they'll come in and box these trees up and take it out in the forest and plant them.
In addition to the regeneration project, the tribe is also working to enhance their fisheries. The Trinidad River and its salmon and other fish have long been a big part of life here. Now tribal members are learning how to keep this valuable resource healthy.
Basically, the thrust of the program is to rebuild the tributary populations on the square to levels that we've seen in the past historically. We have 4 different areas that we work in. We do spawning ground surveys in the fall. We assess the success of the spawners in the spring. We go out and sample juveniles in the spring of the year. We also are responsible for providing harvest estimates. We also operate a fairly large rearing program. And the thrust of our program is to rebuild the tributary populations, to just give the remnant populations a start, and along with doing some rehabilitation work in the streams. People catch their fish in the fall of the year, they dry it, and it takes them through the entire year along with other things that they utilize for food. In the past, there was a traditional means of harvest here. They used a fish dam or a fish weir in which the entire community was involved in the harvest. People that helped out were able to share in the harvest. But in recent years, it's been a gill net fishery. There's probably between 30 and 50 fishermen, but people all share the catch. I mean, the entire tribe as a whole shares in that harvest. It's, younger people fish, and then they provide fish to the older people, and it's just the way it's always been here.
The history and traditions of the valley mean a lot to the Hoopa people, like Bob Kane, who works as a Hoopa tribal policeman.
It means a lot to me. I'm Indian, always will be. We're proud people. Hoopa are very proud people. We do not exploit our ceremonial beliefs, dances, and I'm proud of that. I have to respect the elders. I have to respect the people when it comes to something affecting tribal ceremonial. As a law enforcement officer, I have to respect those also. I have to provide the community with whichever type of service they need.
In addition to a local police force, there is also a Hoopa medical clinic where tribal members can receive modern medical treatment.
We believe that we provide a full range of healthcare services. We, of course, have an outpatient clinic that is quite busy, staffed with 2 physicians and 1 mid-level practitioner. We also operate the ambulance program for the entire area, and then in addition to that, we have home health care. We have services for senior citizens. We have a senior citizens program, a dental clinic. Any problems that we run into, health problems that are beyond the scope of our practitioners here, we refer them to specialists. Of course, the style of living here and the climate and being a isolated area where I guess we don't have to deal with a lot of the stresses and frustrations that people that live in an urban area or the smog and quality of the air, those type of things. I think that our people here have a relatively clean environment.
Although there have been many changes in the valley over the last century and a half, the Hoopah culture has survived, and it's reflected in the various activities throughout the reservation.
Means you're stirring the acorn mush, actually.
That's right.
When you put the paddle into the basket of mush and you go like that, that's Kimish, right?
That's right.
The tribe sponsors a native language program on the reservation. A Humboldt State researcher, Victor Gola, works with Hoopah elders in studying the Hoopah language. They are hoping to complete a Hoopah dictionary and pass the knowledge of the language on to younger people of the tribe.
Tonewan.
Black one is Tonewan.
Tonewan is look like water.
Look like water, shiny one.
Another tribal program that promotes Hoopah culture is KIDE-FM radio. KIDE went on the air on December 16, 1980, and was the first Indian public radio station on the West Coast. Aside from community affairs and educational programs, KIDE radio broadcasts both traditional Indian music and modern music. Another activity is a local pottery class. Although the Hoopah did not traditionally work with pottery, the designs which George Blake teaches his students are similar to those used in Hoopah basketry.
I've been in ceramics for about 15 years now, but I just really respond to the basket design. The designs they're beautiful, and they're not being used hardly at all now. And few of the weavers, the designs are really limited. Where at one time you had these big storage containers, and with these elaborate basket designs, and same with the cooking pots with the elaborate basket designs, and they're not necessarily being lost, and some of them are recorded like in the university annals, but still, not in use, and I'm enjoying it right now, working with them, and not always do the kids that qualify for jobs get the jobs, and so I just want to show these kids that they can just put themselves, in that frame of mind and join in and see something and say, hey, I can do that, and turn it into some money, and making your hands useful and maybe fine-tuning that, and there again, that's tradition, because, we had hands to make fine and beautiful items, art. It's called art today, whether it was a craft a long time ago, and who's to say what's art and what's a craft?
George also is one of the few Hoopah left who work with bows and arrows. He says the Hoopah people were some of the finest archers anywhere, and he is trying to keep this ancient tradition alive.
Okay, I'd like to show you a few things about the archery items in our area. Mostly they're used for dancing now, but it was some of the finest archery in the world, and I'm told that by a famous collector and a record holder. And our arrows were, he said, one of the finest he'd found in the world, and the only arrow to even compare to it was the Aleutian Island otter arrow. And what he was pointing out was, I think, this foreshaft that's made out of elk antler with the obsidian point lashed to it, and this one was cut off sometime, don't know when, for a wand, they said, but it was actually for brush dance. But this one here was the first one I received, and it's so straight, beautifully worked. They were meticulously done. I'd like to show more. This is a yew-wood sinew-backed bow. The bow was actually flat, and the ends were bent, steamed, and it was flat. And as I laid the deer tendon on, it began to pull this bow backwards. And it also looked like one bow I'd seen a long time ago that was actually drawn radically backwards, for the reverse curve. I think it's one of the finest bows made in the United States by Indians. This bow has about 7 layers of deer tendon. It's been put on there with a fish glue, a sturgeon glue that I make myself. Once it's layered on, then it's wrapped here to hold the sinew from pulling away from the bow when it's strung. And up here on the end, it's encased with a really fine or thin piece of rawhide. When I got interested in it, the last man had wandered off in the mountains and died with the knowledge. He was James Hostler, Sr., and he was the last man that it was passed on to him. And I went to a man named Homer Cooper on Martin's Ferry area downriver here among the Yurok tribe, and began to work with him in his 80s until I achieved the knowledge that I needed.
One of the strongest ties to the past are the Hubba ceremonies and dances. The white deerskin dance, the boat dance, the jump dance, and others have continued uninterrupted for thousands of years.
Everything's the same yet, I think. Still have dances. Down the valley, they dance from that side. And in Tilton Ranch, they dance from this side. Well, it's more of a prayer. They pray for food. People live good.
Some of that regalia there means a lot to us in that it was our religion. It's our religion, you know. It's just like all people. We believe now that we got another dance. We believe we completed one ritual prayers for good things to happen here. Always praying for, you know, the acorns is plentiful, that the rains will come and the animals will be, you know, be healthy, and the waters, you know, we have plenty of water, and fish will come up, and the people will be healthy, you know. So I mean, you know, that's our religion, you know. We feel that, like my grandfathers used to say, well, you know, you got to be good to your fellow man.
I mean, a lot of people bring their regalia to the guy that's putting on the dances. So there's a lot of different people that owns the white deer skin, then they use black, different colored deer, and they bring it to the dance to be used.
George Nixon has a large collection of regalia used for the dances, and he is passing the tradition on to his children.
Most all of it's been handed down through the family over the years. My father's family handed it down to him, and he handed it down to me, and then I'll hand it down to my sons. It is important, but I'd pass my camp, our camp, on to our daughters and sons to carry on after. Or even now, I mean, they're learning how to take care of the regalia and move camp and everything. And they'll carry on, I hope.
Yeah, I think that's good. A lot of young people take an interest in it, and they dance and sing.
And that is a true resource of this valley, the young people, many of whom take a keen interest in the history and culture of their people. At Hoopa High School, there are beautiful murals which have remained undamaged for years, and there are several programs which emphasize Hoopa culture. One program gives students a chance to participate in a traditional Hoopa dance called the brush dance.
Spiritual and cultural. It's I don't know, feels kind of good when you dance.
When they're having a real one, they're trying to heal sick people, and that's kind of like a healing dance. Two different kinds of song. They got a heavy song and a light song, and then they got the girls sing. And the heavy song's kind of slow rhythm, you know. Then the light song's faster, then that's where we jump in the middle. And I guess they're kind of imitating some kind of animal, like a woodpecker or something like that.
After the old men pass away, then the younger ones will carry on.
We're just proud to be Indians, you know, and keeping our dances going and keeping our traditions going. And we've always just been passed on through the generations. And we try to teach our younger children, our children and grandchildren.
Most of the youth here with the families, the tribe is considered into families. A lot of them stick to the traditional ways, bring their youth up in the traditional ways, and that has helped our people stick and be strong, stick together and be strong.
It's a feeling of, you know, this is our home. Like every morning when I get up in the morning, I get up fairly early, and I look over this valley and I see, you know, the beauty of it. I like to look at it from the beauty part of it. You know, I can see a greater beauty in this valley, and, you know, being on the outside, I still think that it's the most beautiful part of the world.
I've been here all my life, and I just love it here. There's so many things, hunting, fishing, and swimming, and it's just a lot of activity here if you want to get out and do it. When the people want to, they all get together, and it just shows so much happiness, because when you're in these dances, when you're on the grounds, you don't hate anyone. No matter whether there were enemies with you before, you love them. You have to have love in your heart to be in this. And I think that's what really helps, because of the love. And you could see so many people that are together, and they're just a lot of laughing and being friendly, and it's just real good. Makes you feel good.
The Hoopa Valley has always been a special place for our people, and for good reasons. It has continually provided abundant resources, and the valley even gives us protection from fierce winter storms. But even more than these gifts, it has provided a continuum with the past, a home for our people through the ages. And our ancestors who have gone before us are still with us in spirit. We must make wise decisions now and in the future, for we cannot fail this ancient heritage. We cannot ignore the sacrifices made by those who came before. They have given us a great legacy which we must in turn pass on to those who will carry on. We must move forward with the same determination that has always made our people strong, for those ancient eyes are on us, and their spirits will take us to an even brighter tomorrow. So here in the Hoopa Valley, we are pursuing many new avenues for enriching our future, but we will always remember our historic dances. For us, this valley will always be where our trails return.
Hey,